Hey everybody, how you doing? This is Charles Kell, your professor for English 1220 Introduction to Poetry, the DL 7-week session. And this video, I'm just going to basically walk through the class, set it up, look at the syllabus, and just talk about everything we're going to be doing. All right, so let's jump right in. Here's our homepage right here. I'm going to pull up the syllabus. All right. English 12 2600 Introduction to Poetry. Now, I always thematize my courses, specifically literature courses, when I teach them. And the theme for this course is hunger artists. I'm riffing off of the Kafka story. So there's my name, Charles Kell. You just call me Charles. My email address, if you want to reach out and get in touch. Course description. This is CCRI's course description here. The purpose of this course is to deepen the students' engagement with the metaphorical nature of language through understanding and enjoyment of poetry. The selection of poems focuses on what poetry means and does, what needs and desires poetry fulfills in its writers and readers, and the cultural context and conditioning that define poetry and place value on its existence. That's the CCRI's description. This class is distance learning, remote asynchronous, which means we will not be meeting. I'll be posting videos that walk the class through the lessons and assignments and a lot of the poems. It is your responsibility to watch and take notes on these videos. Even though we are not meeting the course syllabus, we'll structure the class based on Mondays and Wednesdays. This will help you guide where you should be and when you should be completing the readings and assignments. Everything will be located on our Blackboard site. Uh, it is your job to keep up with readings, work, and basically what's going on in the class. You need to be proficient and comfortable navigating Blackboard. If at any time during the semester you feel lost or if you want to work on and cover additional topics, it is your job to let me know. The entire class and the readings will be available on weekly sessions on our Blackboard page. So that's right here. After I go over the syllabus, I will pull that up and walk through that. All right, here's my description of hunger artists right here, and I take this from this Kafka story. Late in Franz Kafka's short story, A Hunger Artist, the supervisor asks the hunger artist why he continues to hunger, and he replies, "Because," said the hunger artist, raising his haggard head a little and whispering with puckered lips as though preparing for a kiss directly in the supervisor's ear so that he would not miss a word. "Because I cannot find a dish I liked. Had I found it, believe me, I would not have made a fuss, would have eaten my fill, the same as you or anyone else." Those were his last words, but the broken look in his eyes bespoke the firm, albeit chastened conviction that he was still hungering. So that's the quote from the story. And some of the questions I want us to think about and ask this semester: what does it mean to hunger, to be hungry? And I'm not talking specifically about, I didn't eat lunch or I'm hungry for dinner. Think of the other ways, right? Uh, Emotional, psychological, philosophical ways that we hunger. In what ways do we hunger? How are poets hungry or hungering? How are the poets on our syllabus hungry? What are we hungering for when we make the difficult decision to read poems or to read and or write anything at all? I think people come to poetry. I mean, you can ask yourself the reason for this, why you're taking this class. Maybe a lot of you are like, well, hell, I just need the credits. This is an elective. But some people come to poetry and these other arts looking for something, right? They're looking for something. And here's my definition of reading. I want us to think about reading a little differently. Not necessarily reading as just in a book, whatever, right? I'm going to argue reading is an always ongoing process where we encounter others, the world, and ourselves. Reading literature and poetry is to encounter alterity or otherness, that which is different. Through different literature, we engage, encounter, and brush up against various alterities, which could enable us to see how others live, and in some way give us a sense of how we live. Alterity here is just a $20 philosophy word meaning difference in all of its guises. You can think of political, social, sexual, gender, education, age, ability, all these differences, right? That's just different people. And I think it's important to read and locate difference in our poems. I think a lot of times we gravitate toward things that we can relate to or identify with, but I think it's just as important, if not more important, to read and encounter things that we might not relate to initially. Other questions I want us to think about: what does poetry do? What is poetry? What do you want from poetry? In this course, we will examine these questions as well as concentrate on reading a diverse body of poems. It's important, I will argue, necessary to embrace ambiguity, difficulty, the fact that poems, poetry, and great literature have no easy answers. I think a lot of times we get frustrated when we read a poem or encounter a text and the meaning is elusive initially. But I think that's the hallmark of a powerful work, when we have to grasp and struggle for different meanings. Here are the learning outcomes for the course. 1. Display a working knowledge of poetry as a literary genre. Identify and describe distinct characteristics of poetic forms. Analyze poetic works for their structure and meaning using correct terminology. Write analytically about poetry using MLA guidelines. Effectively communicate ideas related to the poetic works. Now, we're obviously not in an in-person class, so we'll just do these in other ways. I'm providing all the readings through Blackboard. No required text. I'll show you those in a minute. My policies: don't use the robot to write your paper. Please, please, please. I've noticed in the past, students will write the robot and they quote from the poem it's not even the poem. So just please don't use the robot. You'll receive a 0. Here's a longer note on AI use. You can read that at your leisure there. Here are some other guidelines. A lot of this is for in-person. The first one's important. Let's be mindful of each other's time. This class is online, distance learning. Doesn't mean I'm free or you're free to answer email 24/7. Be sure to look at the Blackboard syllabus and assignments before emailing me with questions regarding due dates, etc., etc. However, if any of you have a question, like you're struggling on a paper or you're struggling with your thesis statement or on a poem, please, I want you to reach out to me and we can set up a meeting or talk further. So you can read all these. Here's what you're concerned about. Here's the big money of the class, the points. The class is based off of 1,000 points. This makes the grading breakdown simple, right? So if you end up with 940 points, you get a 94%, right? So that's that. Here's the class. Discussion boards. These are worth the big half the points of the class. You have 5 discussion boards. They're worth 100 points each. So, and I'm gonna show you those in a minute. 3 papers. Paper 1, paper 2, paper 3. That's it. Excuse me. That's the class. All right. The grades will be available on your papers with detailed comments through Microsoft Word track changes on Blackboard and post in a grade book. My goal, I want all of you to get an A in this class. So if you turn in a paper and you don't get the grade you like, you can revise and turn in for a higher grade. You must complete each paper in order to pass the class. Okay, there's the grade breakdown. If you need academic accommodations, contact the DSS. Here's the class schedule. Some of the themes, ideas we'll be looking at here. And here's how the class is set up. Here's week 1. Introductions. We're going to look at these poems: Henri Cole's Oil and Steel and Chiffon Morning, Harold Bloom's essay, The Art of Reading Poetry. Week 2, these other poets, and so on and so forth. Week 3, week 4, week 5, week 6, week 7. It's a very quick, fast-moving class, right? You have paper 1 due there, paper 2, and then paper 3. That's the course schedule, and I'll show you how the syllabus, it corresponds in our class here. So if you go back to our home page, if you look at weekly sessions here, here's week 1. There are the poems, right? There's the first poem. I'm reading the poem there. So all you gotta do is watch the video, and I give you the close reading of the poem. There's this the Harold Bloom essay where I close read a good chunk of the essay and read that, right? So there's that there. Week 1, week 2, there's the first paper handout. Here's the first paper. There's a video where I walk through the first paper. Here's a video where I talk about C.D. Wright's tours, and that poem's up there, right? Here's the other videos and essays. Here's a video on Hart Crane's Legend. So most of the poems, not all the poems, but most of the poems will be reading. I have videos where I talk about them. It's basically replicating what we'd be doing in an in-person class, right? Lecture, we'd be interacting with the poems. Here's videos on these poems, etc., etc. So those are videos and the poems. Those are all up there. And in the weekly sessions, I have the assignment handouts. But I also on the toolbar here have the assignments. There's paper 1, paper 2, paper 3, the handouts and the videos, right? So that's up there. Here are the discussion boards. If you go to our homepage too, here's guidelines for discussion boards. So I made this video. It's last year, so I mean it's the same. I walk you through turning into discussion boards. You might ignore some of the due dates on the videos with discussion boards and papers, but the basic gist of the video shows you how to turn it in. Here are the discussion boards right here, right? You can pull that up. That walk through this, and the video does this, but here are the dates for the discussion boards that are due. This walks you through what I want you to do on the discussion boards. You go to the discussion boards right here. Click on that. They're all up here, right? Here's the first ones due Wednesday, January 28th. Answer these questions. So that's it. That's the entire class. That's all up here. Discussion boards, assignments, videos. I have videos on basically everything. I also have some other links here, poetic terms and devices. So here's a bunch of other stuff, additional stuff on poetry, poetic essays and notes. Here's a bunch of other things on essays and notes here you could look at that are helpful. If any of you are interested in our good old friend Shakespeare, I close read these sonnets here. But yeah, that's basically the class, right? We have the 3 papers, the 5 discussion boards, and that's that, right? That's that. It's a 7-week class. There's a quick turnaround, so you really want to stay on top of everything. So email me if you have questions or if you're struggling or if you want to talk more. But that's it. That's the class right there. Good luck, everybody. Have a great semester.